Hello, my name is Steve Mulberry with GIS Inc. And in today's video snippet, I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Tony Urquidi, who is a solution engineer within our federal team. So Tony, first off, thanks again for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
So Tony, last time we talked, we looked at sort of things like business continuity in regards to ArcGIS Enterprise and things to consider when maintaining availability. Today, I'd like to discuss with you about ArcGIS Desktop. And it seems like, when an organization considers moving to the cloud, they also ask the question, what happens to ArcGIS Desktop? And I'm referring to either ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro here.
Right. Sometimes desktop GIS gets overlooked when talking about moving ArcGIS Enterprise to the cloud. We do have a couple of options when moving ArcGIS Desktop or moving Enterprise into the cloud and what we do with ArcGIS Desktop. One of those is keeping ArcGIS Desktop on-premise. With your data in the cloud, we'd have to set up some sort of geodatabase sync between the cloud and on-premise. And then we also have the ability to actually edit on-premise through hosted feature services that are in the cloud. Now, another option is moving the ArcGIS Desktop into the cloud, where we run desktop alongside our ArcGIS Enterprise. Once we decide to take ArcGIS Desktop to the cloud, we have a few methods to consider. One of those is remote access. Now, this is installing ArcGIS Desktop or Pro in one of your servers and just RDPing into the box and using it that way. Another option we have is Workspaces or VDI, or virtual desktop infrastructure. And these are full-blown kind of desktops in the cloud. It's not an ArcGIS server, or it's not a server OS, but more of a virtual desktop in the cloud that would run within the same infrastructure. Another option we have is streaming technology. AWS AppStream is one such technology which actually works through a browser thin client kind of solution.
So we got three viable options here. What I think would be interesting to do is let's kind of show this streaming technology and show how ArcGIS Pro might behave inside of this technology.
Great.
I want to start inside of Amazon Web Services, specifically inside the AppStream console, and kind of give you a quick overview of how you would configure an AppStream service. So first thing you do is you come into the images section and you build out an image. Now, Amazon comes with several default images, but you can see here, I built out my own image and you use the image builder process, just like you would build out any instance. This basically sets up the configuration of the image itself and how it's going to be executed. Once you do that, you assign it to a fleet. Now, a fleet is just a group of streaming services on which users and applications are executed and streamed from. And here is where you configure things like capacity. How many times or how many instances can this fleet execute this image? Durations or thresholds for maximum use, or when to disconnect if idle. So those kinds of configurations can be done here. And then lastly, you configure a stack, which consists of streaming resources and the policies associated with those resources. Things like storage, where am I going to put my files? And here I configured an S3 bucket that will persist all of my data and information and files and projects and things like that. So once you get the image, the fleet, and stack configured, then basically you just assign users who have access to that stack. And then you have a URL that you then execute to access that streaming service. So here's an example of ArcGIS Pro and Excel running as AppStream services that I have access to. And basically, all you do is you click on one of the applications. And so I wanted to show you this because this is an example of starting it up fresh. So maybe you come in for work in the morning and you boot up your machine. So basically, this is that process. It's actually starting that instance where ArcGIS Pro is running on and then firing up ArcGIS Pro. So this may take just a few seconds, but once it's done, then you're up and running until you meet one of those thresholds within your configuration for the idle time and max usage times and things like that. So we'll let it run here, and then we'll execute ArcGIS Pro. So once it's done initializing that instance, it starts ArcGIS Pro with the familiar login screen. So you have to come over here and type in your login to access the instance of ArcGIS Pro. And as it's authorizing you within Pro, you'll see that as it loads, it's going to be very familiar here. In fact, it even told me that there's a software update available for this instance. And I can access an existing project. I can start a new project. Let's just go ahead and access an existing project. So it's going to go out and load that project for me. So now we have my project loaded inside of ArcGIS Pro, and now I can begin to work with this project as I would any other project, as if ArcGIS Pro was sitting on my desktop. I'm just going to execute just a few tasks here to kind of show you how that works. I'm going to highlight one of the bookmarks. Let's go into the isolation part of the web map here. And I can identify and click on one of the features. You'll see that information come up, and I can look at that data. So I can begin an editing session. I can add in other pieces of information. And I can actually execute. You'll see this is ArcGIS Pro within this window inside the browser, but here's my AppStream controls. And here I can actually execute one of those other streaming services that I configured within my instance. So here I just fired up Excel. I can load in one of my spreadsheets that I have uploaded to my folder, right? My folder of information inside of the stream service instance. And I can work with the Excel in the same manner. I can actually minimize or resize the screens, and so I can see the different instances running inside of this AppStream browser instance here, and I can set focus to one or the other that way. So you can see I can actually set up a streaming service with ArcGIS Pro or any other applications that I want to work with on a daily basis to get my workflow done.
So we've just seen ArcGIS Pro running inside of a web browser, that thin client. And this AppStream technology seems to be a viable option for running desktop in the cloud. What might be some of the risks that an organization should be aware of if and when they would take this approach?
Correct. AppStream does require a little more configuration. One of those being Active Directory, which is required for users to access network files and shared permissions to the data. That'd be the major kind of configuration that would be required versus all the others.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Tony. So let me quickly summarize. So when moving ArcGIS Enterprise to the cloud, we always have to ask ourselves, where does desktop sit? And there's a couple options there. There's either on-prem and leveraging some methods, getting data synchronized to the cloud and back on premise. And then in the cloud. And then once we move to the cloud, we have things like remote access or Workspace or virtual desktop infrastructures, and then streaming technology all provide a viable means for running desktop inside the cloud. So Tony, I really appreciate you taking time to talk to us about options for running desktop in the cloud. And to those watching this recording today, thank you for joining, and look for more of these video snippets on cloud strategies as we get closer to our webinar, where we will go much deeper into strategies for hosting and managing ArcGIS Enterprise in the cloud. Thank you.